Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jessica Woods, and I'm joined by my special guest, Jon Mason. Jon is a chiropractor, and whilst working with thousands of patients, Jon discovered that the more stubborn physical issues frequently stemmed from underlying unresolved emotional energy. Often issues that had been around for years would quickly resolve once the deeper elements had been addressed. In 2011, Jon's work changed dramatically following a chance incident in which he was asked if he could help someone who lived 300 miles away. This first experiment of remote working was amazingly successful and very quickly expanded into helping people of all ages all over the globe for a wide range of physical and emotional and mental health issues. What was really surprising to Jon was the fact that these remote sessions were equally as effective as his in-person work. And these days, as well as offering in-person sessions at his clinic in Littlehampton, he also connects remotely with clients worldwide, so that location or time zones are no longer a factor. So please join me in welcoming Jon Mason. So Jon, my special guest today, thank you so much for being here. Now, Jon, what I do know about you is that you are a chiropractor, and part of this, what we're talking about today, is you've gone from hands-on to hands-off. So alignment, as you call it, and a journey of transformation. So that's what we're going to talk to you about today. Now, I have visited a chiropractor in the past, and as you rightly say, that it's been a hands-on kind of experience. So I'm absolutely fascinated, and I'm sure other people are going to want to know the journey that you've taken. But one of the things you've mentioned in your bio, Jon, is that from the age of 15, there was something that happened around that time. You had an awakening, and I'm not sure if that's something you'd like to share with us to get started here.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was just a fleeting but very clear experience of looking in a mirror and realizing I'm not the person in the mirror. It was a bit of a strange experience, but that was the point at which I realized this isn't me. This is just something else going on here. And from that point, it was a continual opening into who was here rather than just a physical body. And then everything else followed. I learned to meditate. I was really focused on spiritual things for a very, very long time. And then when I learned to be a chiropractor, I didn't do the normal chiropractic that you think about. It was very much based on people's energy, their emotions, their patterns, and so on. So that's the sort of path I've come through to where I am today.
Okay, so that sounds really quite fascinating. So would you say that you've always been spiritually inclined then? It sounds a bit like you've been looking at the certainly different viewpoints from what you're saying.
Yeah, from about the age of 15, everything changed.
Okay.
It was like, it was more of an inside out experience than an outside in. And because I'd had that experience, I was always looking, I was always searching for something to repeat the experience, which I must admit I've never been able to repeat.
That's not uncommon, actually. I think we can have these, some people call them epiphanies or awakenings, and we just find ourselves sort of like, wanting more of that, because it's really quite magical, isn't it? It's really special, and I'm sure anyone that's experienced it, and probably most people have, fleetingly or otherwise. So Jon, your family background, are they spiritual, would you say?
No, very basic working class people who really quite freaked out when I moved in this direction. When I learned to meditate, I became a teacher of meditation and went off to lots of retreats. They thought I'd really lost it. particularly, after coming from a very working class background. And they were not, and Catholic as well. So it's very structured, and it was quite difficult for them. It wasn't until later life did they ever really get some idea of where I was at with this. But I was, if you like, very different from all the other members of my family. None of them had any idea what I was into at all.
I know I've actually found this to be quite a common theme. There seems to be a lot of people that have, and I'd say myself included. I always sort of said I was a bit of a black sheep of the family, because I always seem to be going in the opposite direction from everyone else. So it certainly sounds like you may have been as well. But that's led you to this where you are now, really, Jon. You've had quite an interesting journey. It really does seem. So you've taught meditation, you got into meditation, you've obviously become really much more aware of energy and energy alignments. And I think, so just tell us about, you would, up until, I think, was it 1992 to 2011, you were seeing clients as a chiropractor, which, as we say, most people would understand a chiropractor. I think you use what I call more gentle techniques. There's different forms of chiropractic. Is that correct? Can you tell me a little bit about the way that you were working, and then we'll discuss, the way that you are working now, because it's a massive change, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is a change, but I think in perspective, the way I was working, you wouldn't probably recognize as being chiropractic at the time, because there was very little pushing and shoving, but there was quite a lot of getting people to think a particular thing, holding a particular point, getting them to breathe, going back into their previous experience where they'd been stressed, and holding particular gentle points on the body. So you probably wouldn't have recognized it as being chiropractic.
No, as I said, I've had chiropractic treatment after I had a baby. Actually, I bent down and got stuck in a position and had to go, and there wasn't anything. I don't remember anything that you're talking about at all. I mean, it was effective. It was amazing. I was so relieved, obviously. But yes, so this is like real deeper. So I think this perception, as you say, has always been with you, or certainly from a young age, and you've developed it in new ways. And I'm really interested in those ways. What is it that you talk about, holding your breath and, and obviously holding that point? Can you explain a little bit more about what that is and how you do
that? What I did, I took a lot of different techniques and brought them all together to something that I can work with. And some people may be familiar with a thing called the emotion code by, I think it's Bradley Nelson who developed it. I'd worked with similar things for many, many years, where you had a list of emotions, and then you could just tune into the person, and through a very, very refined form of muscle testing, not really kinesiology, much more refined form of muscle testing, you could work out what the dominant emotion was that was causing the discomfort in the body.
Wow. That sounds really interesting.
Excuse me. For example, when somebody suddenly hurt their back, it isn't the back that's the problem. It's they suddenly become overloaded with something that they can no longer cope with.
Sorry, I'm laughing there, but that's just typical, isn't it? Because we always, I think, assume that because we've got a back problem, like, as I said, I bent over and pulled something out, but there was obviously a lot more to it than that at the time. And interestingly, now on reflection, you saying that, I can actually recall that, there really was a lot going on. So this is real emotionally linked, isn't it? This is
it's energy and emotionally linked. They're just very, very simple things. If people have suddenly got a problem with their neck and they can't move their neck, basically they don't want to see what's going on around them.
Right.
There's something they don't want to see. And if they can't move their neck to the left, it's normally there's something on their female side that they don't want to deal with, be it their home or their female partner, their daughter, their mother. And on the right side, the same. They can't move their head to the right. They don't want to see something to do with their work or their money or their male partners. So there's an energy there when somebody comes in. It isn't just, oh, your neck's stiff, click, click, fix. If they wanted that, they would go to the osteopath or the other chiropractors. But for me, it was something very different to that. It would be, I'll give you a typical example. I remember one lady coming into me one day and she couldn't move her neck at all. She was late 50s and she was like this and hadn't been able to move it for a while.
Wow.
And I just held a couple of points in the base of a scale and just held a couple of points. So take a couple of deep breaths. And she was standing, not lying on a couch or anything like that. And I got my chart and looked at the chart, and the word that came up was hate.
Oh.
So I don't like to use the word hate. So I said, just think of the word dislike. And I held that point for a couple of maybe a minute. I said, take a breath. And then immediately she went like this. She went, oh my God, I can move my neck.
Wow.
And then she said, and I hadn't said anything. And she said, it is not true. I do not hate my sister.
Oh. She just volunteered it. Obviously released.
And just it came straight out like that.
Yeah.
So suddenly her neck can move. She's freed up this energy of hate and dislike. And the body starts to come back into some form of balance. Yeah.
Wow. You must find your work so satisfying. It must be really, really satisfying to see people come in that obviously, you know, people are coming thinking you're a chiropractor and that you're going to get them out of some kind of pain, but you release the emotional pain, which, as you say, that's, I think you said in your bio, it's that mind-body link, isn't it? That emotional mind-body link that's going on here. And you've really just tapped into that. So these people must leave thinking, wow, you know, can't believe all this stuff that's they've recognized.
It quite honestly, it varies. If they've been recommended personally to me, they're okay with it. But if they've just somehow picked me up from a web search, often they think I'm crazy. And they're probably right, but they don't always like what I do. So it is a mix. And from about 2011, I'd moved away from my practice. I'd sold the practice down here, moved away to the Lake District. And I was a bit lost. I didn't know quite what to do. I had a new practice to build up from scratch, nobody coming in. And what happened was one of my clients from down south had asked me, said, look, my daughter's got an issue. Could you help me remotely?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that was an amazing turning point for me, because I said, I phoned them. I said, I don't no idea. I'll have a go. I'll see what I can do. And I did something, and I can't remember exactly what I did at the time now, but it wasn't very much. And then anyway, they contacted me a day later and said, yeah, fine, this problem is completely resolved.
Wow, another wow. I mean, so you literally said, I don't know, I'll give this a go. That's how you got into it. I thought, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And then somehow they told somebody else. And then I ended up having phone calls with people from New Zealand, from North America, from all around the world, and doing similar things, where we would look at an energy or an emotional issue, help them resolve it, and often whatever it was would start to improve. And it could be on all levels. It could be a relationship issue, it could be a work issue, could be a health issue, anxiety, etc., etc. Yeah. So that's how it started, almost from one child who I worked on. And it's even a bit of a misnomer to think I worked on them. That's not what happened. I just tuned into their energy remotely. That's all I did. And thought, okay, they're slightly off. Let's see if we can help them. And so now most of my work is done over Zoom, and it's remote, and it's bringing people back into their energetic alignment.
I love that. It is that energetic alignment, isn't it? And these times that we're in, I always find it quite fascinating. I was talking to Pam Gregory, astrologer, recently, and she was saying, about a way we're advancing and being able to do things. And what I pick up from that is that very much in that age of Aquarius time where everything's sort of online. So that certainly fits in alignment with what you're doing. And also, I think that we're going through this big paradigm shift where we're healing, whether it's, we call it past lives or through our soul, through the soul level. But do you find that in the work, the people that do come to you, that they are people who are, perhaps more consciously aware of this sort of energy, and not just your work, because obviously maybe they haven't experienced it, but the energy of this time, that this is, connecting on Zoom, as you say, and, doing energetic work.
Yeah. What I'm finding is there's a much more openness of people to the sort of work that I'm doing, and they will give it a go. That's the difference, and the range of people I work with. I'm working with some people from business at the moment. They've got some business issues, relationships when the business aren't working well. I'm working with a very young girl who has such deep anxiety that she is beginning to self-harm. And right the way across the spectrum, people are just crying out and open to new ways of working, because they realize where do they go? If you've got something like this, where do you go? If you've got, you go to a traditional doctor, and often they'll just give medication, and that really isn't the answer. And I think that's the difference. People are opening to say, okay, well, there are new ways of working here. There is a new openness. And people are definitely opening more and more to that. I think what I would class what I did 10 years ago would be considered to be completely mad. And now it's just every day. People don't even think about, oh, well, I'm going to do a remote session with somebody.
Yeah.
And it seems to be that connection is more and more open. There's more and more openness of people happy to do that. Whereas I think maybe 10 years ago, it would have been a very, very rare thing.
Yeah. And also, I think, John, with what's happened with all the global changes that have been happening, particularly with people being locked up in their homes, I mean, that's really accelerated, hasn't it? And again, fits with this, age of Aquarius stuff. I know I keep sort of bringing that in, but I think I'm just seeing where everything's coming, sort of going the right way. That's how it feels to me. It feels like everything's going the right way. I mean, once upon a time, I guess these people like you, these healers, these chiropractors, or whatever they would have called themselves back in ancient times, they were basically hands-on to those people that were around them. And I guess people came from the local villages into the towns and so on. But I think it was all very much more, known within that society. But now there's so many of us, we're spread all over the world. So this is brilliant, isn't it? Really, it's a fantastic way of working. And what makes it even better, it works. You've got proven track record. You've got all these clients coming to you. You've got all these transformations that are happening within people, and really, marvelous that you're doing this. And it was great to hear you say that you're working with young children, because how do you feel about this, John? Do you think there's a rise in the young ones? There does seem to be a lot happening with them, for sure.
Yeah, most of the young kids I work with have got quite an amazing amount of anxiety.
Right.
And what it is that they're not, their parents or their family or their schooling doesn't really explain to them what's going on with them. And so they've got this anxiety energy. And if you think, what is the difference between excitement and anxiety? It's the same thing.
Mm.
They're labeling it as anxiety, and nobody's explaining to them, this is your excitement of being in this world. This is your excitement. You can feel there's a new energy here. You can feel there's an opening, and nobody's telling you about it. They just think you've got anxiety. And yes, if you think of anxiety and the excitement, it's the same or similar energy, and they're just labeling it the wrong way. And it's the new kids coming in today are much more open. As soon as you switch them onto it, they're onto it straight away. No messing around. They go, oh, really? Is that what anxiety is? Oh, okay, fine. I don't have a problem anymore. It's as quick as that. They are switched on, they are open, they are ready, and they are absolutely desperate to find somebody who can help them and guide them, because they just don't get that at home. And it's not anybody's fault, it's just the way it is. And they certainly don't get it in the school, because the school's function is to train them to think a particular way. And they haven't got time for people with issues.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for what you're doing, because to hear this is just absolutely amazing. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of parents, or maybe even, younger people themselves are going to be listening to this, Jon. And just to hear something like that from you, which sounds very simple. And it seems crazy that as parents, or even in schools, but that is another issue really, or another subject, let's just say, that we could talk about in a lot of detail. But I think the starting at home, I know myself, I see a lot of young people that are depressed, and the parents will come to me and say, look, I just don't know how to get past the depression. And like you say, it's usually something just really simple about letting them know that what they're experiencing is absolutely okay. There's not, it's not wrong. It's just their experience, and it doesn't necessarily fit with the rest of the family. And as you say, you and I might notice that being slightly different, and perhaps that's part of it. But it's really good, isn't it, to know that it's not a difficult thing. It really isn't a difficult thing. It's the way that we're all heading when we're, what I call, awakening, I guess. Would you agree that it's part of understanding ourselves?
Yeah, that's it. And the kids start off, they have no idea who they are. They can feel these energies moving in them. They don't quite know where they fit in the world. And often it's just a couple of words and a direct experience with themselves. They need to be guided back into themselves, and then they can guide themselves through their own lives. We're at a very different time in the world at the moment. It was a very rare thing, if at all possible, where, when we were younger, where kids were opening, depression was there, anxiety. These things, anxiety and depression, were very rare. And they were rare because people weren't opening it at the same rate. So often what gets labeled as anxiety and depression is actually a form of opening that's not understood. And once the children understand it, they're away. That's it. It's done. It's done. It's not a big deal. It's really, really nothing as big as the parents think, oh, they need to take this, or they need to have counseling, or years of something. And they don't. Often they're very quick to get it. Very, very quick.
Jon, what's surprising, really, when you think of, I know so many, like I've got children myself. I know they've, in their own way, they've gone through their own problems. I guess we probably all do in life, but like their friends, and then children, as I say, that come to us through different avenues of work or whatever. There's this really massive increase in mental health. It's huge, isn't it? And as you say, sometimes it doesn't take years of therapy. So why do you think I'm not quite sure my question here is, but what I'm thinking is, why do you think it's gone that way for so long? What do you think about that? The old system, I mean, what the old system, why has it been so, how did it even happen?
It's difficult to know, but it's just something that's grown upon us that we've become used to. And something's happening in the world in terms of energy. Something's happening in terms of openness. And as a light gets shone on what's going on, we begin to realize, oh, hold on a minute, that isn't the right way to go. So it's more the fact that we've been in the dark with a little candle trying to work our way through life. And suddenly somebody said, here you are, look, here's a great big powerful torch. And now you can really see what's actually happening, what's going on. Mental health has always been there. It's always been an issue. But nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to explore it. And everybody thought there was something wrong with it. Yeah.
Yes.
Couldn't be depressed. You weren't allowed to be depressed. Yeah. Yeah, you'll be all right. Don't worry. Pull yourself together. You weren't allowed to feel anxious. And we have slightly swung the opposite way. Oh, I'm feeling really depressed. Oh, you've got mental health. Go and see the doctor. Whereas actually what it is a wave in your experience. In other words, what I mean by that is it's inevitable the way the world is. Some days you're going to feel fed up. You're going to feel low. And that might go on for a few weeks.
I totally agree with you there, John. I mean, one of the things I've been really, I work with emotional energy as well, but obviously completely different from you, as we all do. We've all got our unique abilities. But one of the things that is, as you say, it's sort of like it has gone the other way a bit, hasn't it? It's like, oh, you're depressed and now you need to go and see someone. And it is that stigma around that. You need to go and see someone because there's something wrong with you. And that immediately puts, I should think, even more fear and anxiety into people. And, I think one of the things is like, I love talking about it like we have parts within us, I call them, or we have emotions within us. And we have every single one that we can possibly conceive, from what I call the lower end of the scale, which is probably sort of like powerlessness, depression, that sort of thing. And then, of course, we've got the joyous, happy ones. Now, hopefully, we're, swinging between all of them, but the higher end of the happiness and love. But life doesn't always work that way, as you know from all the people that come to see you. But one of the things I love to say to people is feel that emotion. Just allow yourself to feel it, because when in the moment of feeling it, you're not denying it or pushing it away or getting into the logic of the head where, there's something wrong with me. And once we start going down that route, then we truly start to believe there is. And long term, I'm sure this is what you'd agree with, that emotional sets in. And that's probably what you're seeing in people's bodies. It's set in. For example, when you were saying about the lady that came to you, and she said, I don't hate my sister-in-law. That was probably a thought that she was trying to deny, but actually she might really have hated her in the moment, but maybe hanging on to that energy. And then the thought is just going over and over. So it's like cruelty to self, isn't it? When we get into those states. And
we're not allowed, or we haven't been allowed to have certain thoughts. And we actually push people into a corner to realize every thought has a value. For example, a real extreme example would be to say to somebody, you could become a murderer. And they go, well, no, I would never. I could never harm anyone. I could never hurt anyone. Well, if there's somebody there with a knife to your child, I don't think you would be thinking, oh, sorry, it's okay, go ahead, kill them, I don't mind. That's not going to be your thought. But people won't allow themselves to believe that we have this whole range of possible thinking. And the moment you're okay that you have that range, well, so what? So what? It doesn't really matter. It's a little bit like we would prefer, if we go out for the day, that it doesn't rain. But some days it rains somewhat. We would prefer not to feel low one day, but we feel low. So what? And that's what the work that I try and bring into people, is to understand that we are going to have a range of emotions, but not to get stuck on it. It's not always going to rain when you go outside, but it will sometimes. And if you're okay, same thing. You're not always going to feel bad, but if you're okay with it, it somehow disappears.
Yeah, it certainly does. I think don't you think there's some fear around, feeling those deeper emotions? You probably do think you're going mental, or, they're so overwhelming that, that I can't possibly experience this. It's so uncomfortable. Yeah, I know I've learned that it's actually by experiencing them, that very thing that you fear the most, when you dive in there, so to speak, it's like, oh, I'm still here, and now I don't feel that so strongly. In fact, I don't really feel it at all. And I think that's what you're saying, aren't you? When people are constantly focused on something, it's like all things, it gets bigger. If you focus on it's going to rain, and you pick your moment and you go out when it's a real downpour, you're going to get really, really wet. Yeah.
It's that, as you say, just over focusing on something.
So
and making it more important than it is. And making it more important than it is, because after all, an emotion is a response to a whole range of thoughts that you have in your head, and they're just thoughts. Just thoughts. Might not be nice ones, but they're thoughts. And the moment you realize, actually, hold on, it's just the thoughts I'm having that's creating this emotion, then things can change.
Yeah. So, Jon, with your work, if somebody comes to see you, and I mean online or in person, because I know you are actually working with people still online, aren't you? And you are in person. Is that correct? And whereabouts are you for those that might want to come and see you in person? If that's
in person, we're on the south coast in Littlehampton. I don't see that many people one-to-one. Most of the people I see one-to-one in person, live fairly local here, although some people come in from London, and this week I've got somebody coming in from France to see me personally, but mainly it's online that I work with people, and that's really all over, pretty much all over the world at the moment. So and it's surprising how well the online works. I mean, I'm continuously surprised. how it works. And like everything else, there are some people it doesn't help, but there's majority of people get quite a lot of benefit from it, and they tend to recommend others. So most of my work is organic growth, where one person's recommended me to somebody else, and so they're sort of halfway there to knowing what I'm going to do when I work with them.
Yeah, I think the recommendation is always a great way, isn't it? Because then that person's already seen that somebody's already healed. So again, that must be an excellent way to, pass on that energy that you were talking about. It is, isn't it? It's all an energy. So we start sharing it, whether we're aware of it or not. But also the other thing that you do, Jon, I think, do you do something online in like group stuff? Because there may be people that perhaps don't want to go down the single route. There may be other things that you're doing. Can you tell us about that? Because I'm not sure what it is, but I know you do something.
Yeah, we do events normally once or twice a month, which is a group of between 10 and 50 people, and it's a low fee so that people can get a taste of the work without physically committing to have a one-to-one with me. And it's like a very deep, I would call it an alignment process that we go through as a group. So helping people to align with themselves, with their thinking, with their energy. And it just happens to be done as a group. And that, if anyone goes to my website, they'll see it under events. And there's a number of different events, which is well described. And it's a low fee. Yeah, it's a very low fee for people to come and join and see if they like it. And if they like it, often what people will do is then they'll maybe come and do a one-to-one with me later. So it's a nice slow entry into working with me.
That sounds really good. And I've just popped it up there. As you can see, it's johnmason.net. I think that's the best way for people to contact you, and they can see the work that you do. And I'm guessing the events are all on there as well, you said. Is that correct?
Yeah, everything's on there. The one-to-one work, the events, and how to contact us is all on the website. Yeah.
Brilliant. Jon, if people were listening to this, is there something you want to share with them that you haven't already? Is there anything that you want to say that, you know, might help the people listening to this? I mean, I'm sure they've picked up a lot of information from you already, things that you have been talking about, this emotional energy. I think that is absolutely fascinating. And that's where it seems that big changes are made.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that often the problems that we experience on a day-to-day life seem much worse than they really are. And if they can just have the opportunity to speak to somebody like yourself or myself, often we can put it in perspective to them without analysis, without counseling, without trying to fix them, but help guide them back to themselves. And that's really all that we do, is to guide people back into their own self, their own self-healing mechanisms, their own guidance systems, which they've lost. And really, it's as simple as that.
I think it is. I think we've just got lost along the way. We don't listen to ourselves. We do get confused about too much. Sorry, what's the word? I can't get the word out. Outside influence is what I'm trying to say. Where, you know, and I think there's a lot of comparison as well, isn't there? Where people will compare themselves to others, especially younger ones, the peer group and all that. They're the prettiest ones. And I think there's just been so much. So it's so lovely to hear, Jon, that you're guiding people back to themselves. I call it, you know, transformation, empowerment. Those are two words I really love. I know you use the transformation, and it is, isn't it? It's transforming something that's not obvious into something that is. So,
one of the final things to finish on is I use the phrase shoulding. So you should do this, you should do that, I should do this, I should do that. And that is the biggest mistake we make, is that we constantly should or do shoulding. Because if you take the should away, then you become more who you really are rather than who you think you should be, or who your mother thinks you should be, or who your teacher thinks you should be. That's the biggest thing, is to find out where you're shoulding, so to speak.
I love that. That's really helpful, isn't it, for people to be able to say, well, yeah, if should's involved, maybe just stop. Just stop for a moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Jon, thank you so much for joining me today. I have absolutely loved talking to you. I'm you know, fascinated by your work, absolutely fascinated. I'm sure other people are going to be as well. So as I said, you can find Jon at johnmason.net, and he's a Jon without an H. So, and thank you, Jon, for being here, really. And I really look forward to hearing more about your work and what you're doing. I'm wondering if you might be branching out in other areas sometime soon. I think there's, in addition, I meant not away from, I meant additionally, I don't know, I'm just getting a sense that around you that there's a lot more that you're going to be doing, and that will be absolutely fantastic for all of us. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you to everyone that's joined us today or listening to this, and we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.